All right, let's jump right into this explainer. You know that feeling when you wish you could predict exactly what someone is going to do before they actually do it? Yeah, it sounds like literal magic or some kind of mind-reading superpower. But today, we're going to look at human behavior not as magic, but as highly predictable software running on our mental hardware. We're going to explore how objective equations, situational structures, and neurological habit loops can actually map out human actions with incredibly high statistical probability. So here's our blueprint for today. We're looking at data over gut instinct, the core behavior equations, if-then rules and habits, real-world behavioral dynamics, and we'll wrap it up with the master prediction protocol. Section 1. Data over gut instinct. We literally have to start by shattering a pretty massive illusion about how we actually read people. For decades, right, we've been told to trust our intuition. But relying on those subjective gut feelings, like, I don't know, guessing how a date will act based on their outfit, or sizing someone up from a 2-minute chat, it's fundamentally flawed. Accurate prediction actually relies on analyzing objective, passive behavioral patterns. This is what we call our digital exhaust. It's that concrete data we constantly leave behind without even thinking. Think about it. Your smartphone reliably tracks your morning commute, or how often you text specific friends. That raw data, that tells the real story. Now, if you're wondering, okay, exactly how much better is data than human intuition? Look at this. Landmark studies by psychologist Paul Meehl prove that standardized, data-driven formulas consistently outperform the unstructured intuition of experts by 10 to 13%. And get this, that's across all fields. So when it comes to predicting what someone will do next, algorithms beat the experts' gut every single time. Honestly, it's kind of humbling, but it's totally true. But wait, before you go making predictions using this data, you've got to run it through a stress test. We have to rigorously evaluate the behavior against 6 essential situational conditions. Just ask yourself, is the behavior a frequent habit? Are we predicting for a short time frame? Is the situation similar to the past? Has the behavior gone without corrective feedback? Has the person's identity stayed stable? And is their lifestyle generally consistent? If you can check off these boxes, your predictive accuracy absolutely skyrockets. This checklist right here is basically your secret weapon. Moving on to Section 2, the core behavior equations. Now that we know objective data is our hero, let's look at the foundational code of action. We can actually map human behavior using 2 universally recognized formulas. First up, we have Kurt Lewin's field equation, B equals F of P times E. Lewin essentially established that behavior isn't just the result of someone's innate personality. Actually, scratch that. It's more like behavior is a function of the person, their traits, their history, their current mood, interacting dynamically with their environment, the physical layout, the social pressures around them, the rules. If you want to change or predict a behavior, you can't just look at the individual in a vacuum. You really have to look at how the environment is actively nudging them. Building on that environmental foundation, B.J. Fogg operationalized behavior design with this honestly beautiful formula. B equals M times A times P. So a target behavior only happens when motivation, ability, and a prompt all converge at the exact same moment. Now, motivation is driven by things like pleasure, pain, hope, fear. But we all know motivation is incredibly fleeting. I mean, think about your motivation to hit the gym at 5 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday. 0, right? So here's the kicker. A prompt only works if a person's combined motivation and ability push them above an invisible action threshold line. If it falls below that line, the prompt completely fails and absolutely nothing happens. So the absolutely crucial point here is how we define ability. Ability isn't just about raw skill. It's really about simplicity. Let's look at this ability chain. Time, money, physical effort, mental effort, social norms, and routine. Your ability to do something is strictly defined by the weakest link in this exact chain. Like, if you have the time and the money to cook a healthy meal, but the mental effort required after a long workday is just way too high, the chain breaks, friction wins out. Meaning, predicting and shaping behavior is largely about aggressively reducing that friction. All right, Section 3, if-then rules and habits. Let's shift gears a bit and see how these mathematical laws actually run on our internal hardware. So, how exactly do our brains process situations to make choices? Well, when you consciously decide to do something big, like buy a new car, you're relying on what's called the theory of planned behavior. Your intentions are shaped by your attitude toward the action, the subjective expectations of people you care about, and your perceived control over the whole outcome. But let's be real, we don't consciously deliberate every single action like we're buying a car. To save energy, our brains rely heavily on rapid, situational processing to just navigate our daily lives. This is where psychologist Walter Mischel comes in and completely reframes personality for us. He proved that personality isn't just some rigid box. You aren't just 100% introvert or extrovert all the time. Instead, our brains process situations through highly predictable if-then signatures based on specific situational cues. For example, if criticized privately, then they reflect. If criticized publicly, then they get defensive. By mapping out a person's unique if-then triggers, we can actually predict their behavior in almost any given environment. It's a real game changer. And when those if-then actions repeat in stable contexts, they literally physically shift from the conscious prefrontal cortex over to the basal ganglia in your brain. They become fully automated via this tripartite habit loop. It starts with a cue, maybe a specific time of day or an emotional state. Let's say your phone buzzes. That triggers the routine, which is the behavior itself. You check the notification. And the whole thing ends with a reward, a tiny spike of dopamine that tells your brain, hey, that felt good. Let's remember this for next time. Now, forget that old myth that it takes 21 days to form a habit. Nope. Researcher Philippa Lawley found it takes an average of 66 days to form a habit entirely. 66 days. And the absolute best way to ensure you survive those challenging 66 days is by aggressively lowering cognitive friction, using the 2-minute rule. You basically scale down the routine to a version that takes under 2 minutes to execute. Remember Fogg's ability chain we talked about? You are practically guaranteeing survival here by making the ability to do the action incredibly easy. To build or even predict new positive behavioral changes, we can literally anchor a new behavior to an established one through habit stacking. The rule here is super simple. After I do an existing habit, I will do a new habit. You're essentially using a hardwired routine as the reliable prompt for the new behavior. It is behavioral math at its absolute finest. Section 4, Real-World Behavioral Dynamics. We've looked at the abstract formulas in the neurology, but let's take all this math and apply it to relatable, everyday arenas. Here is your predictive blueprint in action across 3 vastly different arenas. Whether you're managing teams in the workplace, driving commerce by reducing buyer friction in sales, or trying to improve communication in your romantic relationships, the data-driven actions are exceptionally clear. Let's break these down one by one, shall we? Okay, first up, in the workplace, we can map a person's behavior to one of 4 core DISC styles. Is your colleague dominant, relentlessly seeking results, influential, chasing social recognition, steady, wanting a sense of safety, or conscientious, relying strictly on logic? Identifying an employee's style allows you to accurately predict their communication priorities and then tailor your environment to suit them perfectly. And speaking of the environment, you can completely avoid huge management errors and build self-generated commitment by simply designing a workplace that satisfies 3 core psychological needs from self-determination theory. We're talking about autonomy, giving them ownership, competence, allowing skill mastery, and relatedness, fostering connection. Provide these 3 things, and the math says the positive behavior will naturally follow. Moving over to couples dynamics, this one is wild. Researcher John Gottman can predict relationship failure with a staggering 94% accuracy. 94%! And he doesn't use magic, he tracks data. Specifically what he calls the 4 horsemen of a relationship: criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. If these automated survival reactions are frequently present, the predictive outcome is unfortunately divorce. Conversely, though, Gottman's math proves that successful relationships consistently maintain 2 exact statistical ratios. First, a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions, and second, an 86% bid acceptance rate, meaning when a partner reaches out with a bid for connection, the other intentionally turns toward them 86% of the time. These aren't just random guesses. These are the strict mathematical parameters of a healthy relationship. Hit these ratios, and the math says you survive. And finally, Section 5, the Master Prediction Protocol. We've covered the core equations, the habit loops, and the real-world arenas. Now let's synthesize the whole shebang into your actionable toolkit. To predict or shape any behavioral outcome moving forward, you just execute this 5-step unified behavioral protocol. Step 1, audit the situational cue. Map out the physical and social environment. Step 2, assess personal baselines using trace data and those DISC styles. Step 3, draft an if-then profile. If faced with X, they will do Y. Step 4, run a consistency check against our 6 conditions like frequency and stability. And finally, the ultimate takeaway, Step 5, route with B equals MAP. Remember that golden rule of behavior design we talked about? If you want to steer behavior constructively, do not force motivation. simplify the action, elevate their ability, and introduce a clear, timely prompt. So, you now have the fundamental code to read human behavior. Like we said at the start, it's not magic. It's a calculated function of the person, the environment, their ability, and the triggers all around them. So the only question left for you is this. Knowing what you know now, how will you apply these tools to improve the systems and relationships in your own life? How will you redesign your environment today? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.